Okay, friends, this is lesson 9, unit 9 of theory, the second to last for the year, which is exciting. This is all about augmented and diminished triads, which is building off of the work you did in unit 8 with major and minor triads. So we're just going to jump right in. I'm going to hide this so that we can see everything. So just remember, triad review. Remember, a triad is created by stacking two intervals of thirds on top of each other. So that one's really important to remember in a definition context. So this lower note, the root, and then the third above the root, and then from the third to the fifth, even though 3 to 5 is 5 minus 3 is 2 if you count with our interval context 1, 2, 3. So 2 thirds stacked on top of each other. No matter the interval, there are always going to be two types of thirds stacked on top of one another. Okay, so don't forget that. And remember, there are 4 types of triads. There's the major and minor, which we did last time, and then diminished and augmented. There are several different ways to think about building triads, as we mentioned in lesson 8. You may know other ways. You can come up with other ways to think about it, but in class, we're going to always go back to the major scale and use that to help us. So major triad review is created when the root, third, and fifth of any major scale. So if you did an F major scale, use your circle of fifths, use your whole steps and half steps pattern, but you're going to take the root, the third, do, mi, and so, and the fifth. And that is that major triad, do, mi, and so, or in this case, F, A, and C. And that is going to be your major triad. Okay? Boom, there it is, F, A, and C. It is a major triad. Now recall, if you want to make that minor, you lower the third of that major triad. So from the last slide, there's the F, A, and C. I'm going to take the third, remember, and lower it by a half step, and it becomes F, A flat, and C, exactly what's here, and that is minor, lowercase m versus uppercase m. Okay, so that's just a reminder about major and minor. Now moving on, you could practice again with D major, D, F sharp, and A. So if you were just double checking yourself, you would look on your circle of fifths. D major has 2 sharps, F and C. So D, E, F sharp, G, and A. And you don't need any of the rest of the scale. You just need the first 5 notes. Root, third, and fifth. D, F sharp, and A. Lower the third. F sharp becomes F natural, and I go from a major triad to a minor triad. Okay. Do, 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 do. Again, there are many ways to think about this. This is just one way, but this is the way we're going to use. So diminished. So what we're going to do with diminished triad is we're going to create that by taking the minor triad we've made and lowering the fifth a half step. So for example, in that F major triad we've already been working on, we lower the third to make it minor, okay, and it becomes F, A flat, C, and then we lower the fifth, the top note, a half step, in addition to the third. So we've lowered the third already, and then we lower the top note, which makes it diminished. That, I think that's pretty straightforward, actually, if you think about it in steps. Always start with the major, then make it minor, then make it diminished. And so they have practice here. So take a moment and practice. Welcome back. So it's asking you to build the major triad, right, and then the minor, and then the diminished. So if you're just checking your answers, you can do this yourself as well. For each of these, you're going to just follow that basic set of rules, and it should provide you with results. Now I have a cheat way to do it, which I'll show you in just a second, and you could listen to each of these in the slideshow before we talk about augmented. And if we had a chance to talk in class, I showed this to you. So remember, let's say we're doing C major. Okay, so C major, and we need to look at the circle of fifths. What's our key signature? No sharps, no flats. C, D, E, F, G. We just need those first 5 notes for the major triad. So major triad is going to be C, E, and G. Okay, and then I'm going to take that third scale degree and lower it by a half step to E flat, and that makes it minor. And then I'm going to take the fifth scale degree and lower it by a half step to make it diminished. Remember, keeping the E flat the same, and then G becomes G flat. So that's how we do that. And what I would do is essentially why I just wrote this out is I would have a little, if you will, cheat sheet that would just say major, and I don't know if you want to put the augmented on what side, which we'll talk about in a second, minor and diminished, and then there's augmented. And I would just say root, third, fifth, and then I'd put a little sign that says down a half step, root, and I'd say third with a flat and fifth, and then I'd have another little sign to lower that by a half step. So a flat 5, a flat third, and the root. Now, the key to this is, remember, you may not have a flat. It might be a sharp that goes to a natural. Could go to a double flat. So that's the one piece you need to remember, is that the flat doesn't indicate you're going to have a flat in your answer necessarily. But this kind of a chart might be helpful for you as you take any tests and quizzes and stuff. The augmented triad is what happens when we take the fifth of a major triad and raise it a half step. So if you look at that same F major triad, okay, and we're going to just take the fifth scale degree, the fifth of the chord, and we're going to raise it by a half step. So C becomes C sharp, and I have what we call the augmented triad. So before we do this practice, if you go back here, my root, my third, and then my fifth goes up a half step, okay, and it goes to a sharp 5. And to put that in practice, then we'll go over here, C, E, and I go up a half step, so G becomes G sharp. Okay, and that's how that little square, this square, is going to be helpful to you. I think I'd write it down. I would just use it. So you circle fifths on one side of you, this chart on the other side of you, and then just look at the questions and answers. So go ahead and practice those and come back. Welcome back. So here's the answers to those. Whoa, what is going on? Sorry, y'all. There we go. There's the answers. So A major becomes A major with that E sharp. C major, we just did that one in the other slide. C, E, and G sharp. B flat major, you raise the fifth to F sharp. Notice you have a mix of sharps and flats there. So this might look wrong, but it is correct. And then with a G flat major triad, G flat, B flat, and D flat, that D flat gets raised, becomes natural. Okay. So just remember, you might have a mix of sharps and flats and naturals. That's not wrong. Just follow the order and the rules in the chart. You should be fine. And let's just review. This is basically what I was doing on that other slide. You could print this if you wanted to. So the major triad, C, E, and G is an example. The root 1, third, and fifth, or do, mi, and so, becomes do, me, so, or the root, a flat third. So there's that symbol right there, flat third, and a fifth, and then diminished. You've got the same flat third. You don't change anything, so don't do extra steps. And then you flat the fifth. And that's what you could write in your chart. And then augmented, you've still got do, mi, or 1, 3, and then 5 becomes sharp, a sharp 5. Okay. So the way to really, I mean, again, this is how you answer every question on a test on this. What is the root of the triad? Write out the major scale. If the triad was major, what notes would it have? So that's just writing out the scale and looking for the root, the third, and the fifth. If it doesn't match, then you move on to step 3. If it does match, you have a major triad. If it doesn't match, look at number 3. The notes are not the same. How are the notes different? And compare it to the chart, this chart. Okay, so that's why it's good to have the chart, because you can always go off of the major to determine what happened. So this is just another practice. You're supposed to determine the quality, major, minor, diminished, or augmented. So pause and do that. Welcome back, and we'll just hit the go button, because you could actually do this on your own as well in your PowerPoint. That first one, if we had built an F major scale, and then I compared the F major to this one, it would be F minor. So with the second one, look at it. So that's an A. So I'm just going to practice this idea with you. I'm going to leave that chart there just to make sure that we understand how to do this. And if you're bored right now, well, this is about all I'm going to do. So we have A. So I'm going to write out an A major scale. Use your circle of fifths or your whole steps and half steps pattern. I know that there's 3 sharps in A. They're F, C, and G. So F, C, there's C sharp, there's D, and there's E. So my original major triad is A, C sharp, and E. And I'm going to compare and contrast to that question A, C sharp, and E sharp. So then I have to determine, well, I have an A, I have a C sharp, and I have an E sharp in the question. And so what you've got to do is you've got to go, okay, there's A, there's C sharp, that matches, this is different. E to E sharp, what's the difference? E sharp is a half step higher. So I go over here and look at my chart. If a half step higher, that is going to be an augmented triad. And let's go check our work. And boom, there it is, A augmented triad. So that's how I would process each of these. The next two, let's see if you got them right. You could pause always and come back, is just E major. So that one, if you would have compared and contrast, you would have seen there was no difference. And then the next one on the top would have been B diminished, because B would have normally been B, D sharp, F sharp, and because I lowered the third and the fifth, that becomes diminished. Now the next one, let's practice together. So there's a G flat. So I'm going to go through here again, and I'm going to draw the major. So G flat. So G flat, if I looked at my circle of fifths, you would find that you have how many flats? Yeah, 6. So G, A flat, B flat, C flat, and D flat. You're just worried about the G flat, B flat, and D flat. Okay. And then we look at the answer. I have a G flat, a B flat, and a D flat. Oh, that matches. That's going to be major. And there you go. Okay. Except for that was bass clef. Bah! And that's why you have to pay attention to the clef. There you go. So let's go. Now, if it had been G flat, we would have been fine. But we were in bass clef. Geez, Thompson, pay attention. So B flat is two flats, B flat, C, D, E flat, and F flat. And just per what they just said in the answer, thanks. B flat, I low, and they have D flat and F flat. And you'd have to look and compare. Well, I have a flat third, so it could be minor, but I also have there's a flat fifth, so it's got to be diminished. And that's why we look at clefs, kids. So there's bass clef. You could keep going then. There's the G flat major. We just did. I was not paying attention. Next one was E flat minor because I lowered that third a half step. This one's a little funky. C sharp. Let's just do this one. So look at C sharp, which would have all the sharps: C sharp, D sharp, E sharp. Wow. E sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. So I'm going to write my majors C sharp, E sharp, and G sharp. And I'm going to compare it to what I have, which was C sharp, E sharp, G double sharp, C sharp, E sharp, and G double sharp. So C sharp to C sharp matches, that's major. E sharp to E sharp matches, that's still major. G sharp to G double sharp. Oh, G double sharp's a half step higher, so that's got to be augmented. You go back, and that's augmented. And then you could check the rest of these. Look for the clef, because Thompson's an idiot and didn't. There's G major, C minor, D augmented, and A diminished. If you have problems with those, come see me and talk to me. There's ear training, so you can listen to them. I'm not going to do a ton of ear training on the test, because that is tough to do, especially when we're not practicing as a full group, but it's good to know. I might do 3 questions like that, so that you can know. And that is it. That is all of the Unit 9 material. And so if you have questions, let me know. If not, we'll talk about it more in class.